The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. On leaving the synagogue, Jesus entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Simon's mother-in-law lay sick with a fever. They immediately told Jesus about her. He approached, grasped her hand, and helped her up. Then the fever left her, and she waited on them. When it was evening after sunset, they brought to him all who were ill or possessed by demons. The whole town was gathered at the door. He cured many who were sick with various diseases, and he drove out many demons, not permitting them to speak, because they knew him. Rising very early before dawn, he left, and went off to a deserted place where he prayed. Simon and those who were with him pursued him, and on finding him said, "Everyone is looking for you." Jesus told them, "Let us go on to the nearby villages, that I may preach there also. For this purpose have I come." So he went into their synagogues, preaching and driving out demons throughout the whole of Galilee. The Gospel of the Lord. My friends, if you're here in Laramie this weekend, please join us on Sunday afternoon between noon and 1 p.m. here in the parking lot of the Newman Center. Another opportunity for food drive to support Laramie Interfaith. More and more of our sisters and brothers in our community are finding themselves in need financially. They're growing weary and tired of COVID and unemployment, and the opportunities for us to reach out continue to grow. So please, do stop by if you're able. We'd love to receive your donation and to take it to help someone else who can benefit from your generosity. Ash Wednesday is coming up on the 17th. Liturgies here at the Newman Center will be 7 a.m. and 5:15 p.m. You need to sign up on our website, or if you're more comfortable staying at home, we'll offer a pre-recorded opportunity for reflection, some beautiful music, a call to examine our own lives, and to prepare for this great season of Lent together. It's a very interesting detail contained in the story. Rising very early before dawn, he left. Why doesn't it just say Jesus went out in the morning to pray? It was in the morning, but still very dark. This was something other than early rising. This wasn't just as dawn was breaking or just before sunrise. This was morning and still very dark. This was the kind of time when babies wake up to nurse. This is the kind of time of the morning when someone is up because sleep won't come, because worry won't stop, because the mind and the heart keep racing. This is the time right now when grandparents awake in the night wondering if they'll be able to hold their grandchildren again. This is the early morning worry of a teacher who hasn't seen a student in person or on a Zoom class for the last 4 months. This is the early morning worry of someone who still hasn't been able to get employment and wonders how much longer the money will last. This was the early morning worrying I experienced last night for no particular reason, trying to go to bed early and still awake at midnight, 1, 2, finally getting some sleep at 3. Many are calling it COVID insomnia, the collective weight of this situation that leaves us restless, unable to find peace. I think that's part of what Jesus was experiencing. It wasn't the discipline of getting an early start to the day. No, this isn't the early bird catches the worm. This was more like getting up so as to ease the torment of the night. Jesus got up in the morning when it was still very dark, and he went off to a deserted place. It's a tough word to translate. One says a solitary place, one a lonely place. It's a place less defined by geography and more defined by spiritual reality. It's a place Jesus had been before and a place he would be again. The wilderness, different than a topographical standard, was a wilderness place of prayer while it was still very dark. This bears a deeper connection. Jesus was not heading out for morning devotions, the first prayer office of the day. This was Jesus gutting it out in prayer. Jesus bearing his soul. Like Jesus in the wilderness being taunted by the devil. Like Jesus outside the garden, pleading for God to take this cup from him. It was that kind of spiritual space for Jesus. There he went and prayed. Have you ever been there? If so, you're not alone. God is there as well. But what was he there for? What drove him to this early rising, this place of isolated, solitary prayer? I'm not sure. Maybe his struggle was about the magnitude of one day's accumulation of human suffering. The whole town was at his door, everyone who needed something. Maybe what woke him, what kept him up, what got him up, was the sheer amount of work that was yet to be done, that he was getting himself into. Would there ever be an end to it? Maybe his dark night of the soul was related to his own realization that they had to move on from there, even when there was more need, more people to be met, more love to be shared, more kingdom work to do. I'm not really sure. But what he said to Simon and the others pursuing him, who came hunting for him, was, "Let us go on to the nearby villages, that I may preach there also. For this purpose I have come." Now, some people would stress the importance of proclaiming the message of the kingdom of God over the healings, but for me, I want to focus on that words, "For this purpose I have come," to go to neighboring towns, not to stay here, to go throughout Galilee, to proclaim the message to others, to not stay here, but to preach not just to you, but to them. We have to go, even though it seems our work is not yet done. And the whole town of Capernaum that was left on his doorstep, there was more healing to do. They, like me, wanted to keep Jesus for themselves. They wanted to hoard Jesus, and he knew it. It kept him up at night. But for the sake of the gospel, he had to go on. He had to keep moving out. As Pope Francis says, don't just sit in the office of the church. Don't just be there waiting for people to come to you. Go out to the world. Go and bring the healing of Christ to those who are most in need. This is what we're called to do, and yet I want to hang on. I want to stay where I'm comfortable, hoarding Jesus. The disciples, the town, they wanted to keep Jesus to themselves, just like on the Mount of Transfiguration, when Peter wants to build the booths, the tents for Jesus, Moses, and Elijah, so they could all stay there and preserve the moment. Like when the mother of James and John asks Jesus to give them each a seat at his right and a seat at his left in the kingdom. Like when the disciples were astonished that he would be speaking with a Samaritan woman. Like those who told the blind beggar by the side of the road to be quiet. Like when the disciples were angry when the women anointed Jesus with the expensive perfume. Like at the empty tomb, when the disciples held on to the feet of the risen Christ, when they tried to cling to Jesus. That morning, when it was still really dark, somewhere near Capernaum, they hunted for Jesus. It wasn't a following thing. It was a keeping Jesus for themselves kind of thing. I wonder how often that's where we find ourselves as practitioners of religion. We're not so interested in being disciples and doing what Jesus did. We just want to keep Jesus right here, safe, controllable, hoarding Jesus. When the followers of Jesus think the good news of the gospel is just for them, or is more important to them, or is first and foremost really about them, when those who use the name of Christian turn Jesus into a Christ of their own making, a Jesus who agrees with everything they already believe, and a Jesus who will excuse or understand or rationalize along with them everything they do, hunting down Jesus. We're living in a time when public figures and political discourse and cable news and tax policy turn pretty much everything, reduce everything, bring everything back to us versus them. Those who want to keep Jesus to themselves, of course, think that Jesus is for them and with them and for no one else. And isn't that the danger? Isn't that what's ripping our church apart? When I think Jesus is for me and against you? When Jesus agrees with everything I believe and rejects everything you believe? We're in a tough time in our church. With Joe Biden as our president, even our own bishops in leadership, that great separation that's happening. We can't fall trap to this temptation. When we do, we misconstrue the profound theological affirmation of Christ is for us into a sinful game of winners and losers that assumes that Jesus is for us and not for them. If I'm honest, it's a reason I struggle with the statement, God bless America. Not that I don't want God to bless America. Not that I don't value the country in which I live. Not that I don't want this place to be as successful as possible, caring for everyone. But maybe Tiny Tim had it more correct in the Christmas story. God bless us, everyone. No exceptions, no exclusions. But when we enter into this time of winners and losers, when we are removed from the gospel, when it comes to the Jesus of the Gospels and the poor and the stranger and the foreigner and the unclean and the different and the sick, it is clearly Christ not just for us, but for them and for everyone. When we cling to Jesus, we head into interfaith relationships more concerned about pure doctrine than courageous love. We err on the side of judgment rather than grace because it's more important to be right than to be faithful to Jesus. We yearn for a faith life, a church life, a religious life from the past, rather than boldly looking to what God has in store in the days to come. When we hoard and cling to Jesus, we slip down the slope of thinking the world could be going down the drain in terms of justice and righteousness. But as long as me and Jesus, as long as we're okay, it's going to be fine. We're sure of our own salvation in Him. It's all okay. It's a great temptation to withdraw from the world, to condemn the world, instead of to be present in the world. But my friends, when we try to keep Jesus to ourselves, it's just too easy to make decisions, to come to conclusions, to form opinions, all in His name, that are hurtful to others. It's bound to happen. When you crave a Jesus of your own image, that you come off sounding and acting like the Pharisees, who gave thanks that they were not like the others, the tax collectors, the sinners, the spiritual but not religious, the evangelical right, the liberal left, the New Agers, the atheists, the red state voters, the liberal elites, on and on. When we try to cling to Jesus with both hands, we don't have to worry about patting ourselves on the back because we believe that Jesus is already doing that for us. Thank you very much. This is a difficult time in our world, a time to recognize that like Peter's mother-in-law, we're sick. There's a fever. There's something in us that needs healing. There's a wholeness that needs to come about in our own lives and in our world. And it begins with recognizing the fundamental truth in chapter 1 of Mark's gospel, that the love of Jesus, the message of the kingdom, it isn't just for a chosen few. It's for the entire world. And it may look different throughout the entire world. Today, this week is an awesome chance to stretch out our hand, to let Jesus reach out His hand toward us, as He did with Peter's mother-in-law, to pick us back up, to restore us to health, to relieve the fever of hatred, and to bring us back into communion with God's people, to be led by the hand as disciples. In a few moments here, in this sacrament, we will feast again on this love and grace promised and present. We'll remember the holy words that Jesus said, and we'll remember that Jesus never said, "Take, eat. This is my body broken just for you. This is my body broken for the world." When we can live in that spot, I have a hunch we're all going to sleep much better, and we're not going to find ourselves waking up in the early, dark hours of the morning.